Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the Rex80 from Spedix, featuring a Caddx EOS 2 camera, 1103, 11,000 kV motors, Gym fan 40mm 4-bladed props, power switchable VTX 25 and 100 milliwatts, flight controller is an F405 with an OSD, 12 amp 4-in-1 ESC, canopy while rigid is also flexible. Motor post to motor post I'm getting almost 81 millimeters. Mine weighs 43.5 grams. As we take off here, you probably saw that LED light in the downstairs. It's flashing and going around and around. And also, this flight came when we were under a bit of construction. You might be able to tell that we had some lights added into that forward dining room. I'm not quite a fan of making that a forward dining room. But anyways, to the flights, I struggle a little bit to really fly the Caddx EOS camera inside very well. Inside, I feel especially attuned to having an ultra-wide field of view. What we oftentimes see in the smaller, lighter, all-in-one cameras, that is what I'm accustomed to. So you may be unimpressed with this flight, and it is a bit sloppy, and I get out of control from time to time. I believe we have at least one crash in this flight. It's not too severe. I actually broke the frame outside. It's not to worry, and I'll probably mention it a second time. I do believe they have updated the frame. I had heard from Spedix that they changed the frame, so they have a V2 that they've come out with. And some of the components that we'll take a closer look at on the bench, I think are fairly interesting, especially in a build, if you're interested in doing something like that, because the boards that are in here are wafer thin, and I think they would be pretty dang light. But we'll take a deeper dive into the internal components. This is almost a proof of concept that it can be flown inside if that's something that you want to do. For me, I'm not comfortable flying inside all the time, but it is obviously doable. So unless your home is kind of our size or maybe even bigger or gigantic, you could probably manage to fly it inside. If you want to fly it fast and get acrobatic, you could probably do that. You're going to need to have the skills to handle those sort of things. Those 1103 motors, they are good and responsive. They're very linear. That's something that I found with the trash can, is that the thrust wasn't very linear, and on this particular motor set, I did find that the 1103s were very linear. I do think that we should switch out the props. Props are temporary. Micromotor Test Lab did some testing on the gym fan props and a host of other 40mm props, and it looked like the clear winner as far as efficiency and also thrust was the gym fan 3-bladed props. But you might want to give those a try if you're looking for a second set of props for this particular machine. There is more to talk about, and we'll get into that. I think my machine's got a little bit of a fault, and I've actually had this for over 2 months, and I've worked on it, I'll work on it here and I'll work on it there, and then I put it down and leave it alone for a while, hoping a new idea will come to me for something else to try. But it's got a flight flaw that it's not really coming out in this type of flight, but if you do more acrobatic kind of flight, you will find an issue with at least mine. This is a case where, because of the issue that I experienced, you should really do your research, do your homework, and make sure you find a series of these that are in the shape that you want them to be in, so that if you make a purchase, that it does kind of bode well that what you're going to get is more than likely to work, not like mine, but like the others that you see. And when we get to that part of the video, then we'll talk about a little bit more and the things I think you should ask for or look for in the videos that you might take in. And that's one of the things about watching highlight videos or videos that are clipped of the flight footage, is you might not see it. That last crash will wrap up our flight. You do see it come in at 3 minutes and 22 seconds. We could have gotten probably 10, maybe even 15 more seconds of flight. So we're going to take the Rex80 for a spin outside. And this was one of those rare nice days that we had back, a month or so ago. But unfortunately, I see jello, and I see it kind of heavy, especially as we get going straight and we kind of pick up some speed. One of the things I should have mentioned during the indoor flight that kind of keeps it from being really indoor friendly is the canopy, and it kind of limits you on the amount of camera angle because you can't go very flat. So it's got a little bit of up tilt, otherwise you get the camera down behind the canopy, and we definitely don't want the canopy blocking some of our view. So your lowest camera angle is reduced a little bit. It seems to fly fine, but I think we've just got a mounting issue with that EOS 2. It could be a tune issue, but I worked on that for a while as well, and I didn't get any better results. So again, it's something that you have to take note of. It's not as bad as the trash can originally was. I have that to say for it. The trash can had some pretty severe jello in my opinion, until I started making some modifications to kind of shore that up. I think with the 2 zip ties I ended up using on the trash can did help quite a lot, but it didn't fix it in my opinion 100%. I'm not sure what we can do with the mounting system that we've got in this, but I'll open the canopy and when we get on the bench and we'll take a little deeper dive. Maybe you see an opportunity to shore up the camera mount in some way, and then you will know how to fix one if you choose to get one. And maybe they've already fixed it in the mount. I haven't heard anybody talk about the mount. Quite frankly, this machine, it didn't make the review round, so I don't know how many reviewers actually have this. You may have to go for a deep dive and see if you can find some people that maybe they're not reviewing it, but maybe just posting flight footage, and you can just go take a look at that. Again, because I am encouraging you to do quite a bit of research on this. This one is from Spedix, so that's a company that we've used a lot of their components here on the channel. I've used their flight controllers, their ESCs, probably 6 or 7 times. So, and we can find all the parts online. And because we can find those parts, if we do have a failure, we can replace the individual components a little bit easier than we can with an all-in-one board. An all-in-one board generally is going to bring the weight down under the 30-gram marker or close to the 30-gram marker, whereas this has a couple of boards. There's also a support in the frame. I'll try to remember to point that out. There's 2 supports actually that help to stiffen the frame up. And what I'm doing right now is I'm actually just kind of doing some flippy floppies, and that was one of the issues that I see, as I keep alluding to, having a flight issue. We see on an outside flight we don't quite get 3 minutes of flight. I nearly hit the pergola. Even in a hover we still have some jello. This is a secondary outside flight, and this is the one where I'm going to kind of highlight one of the flaws, one of the things I was trying to fix. And what you're going to find is what appears to me to be a desync, and I changed the startup power, I was changing the motor timings, I was turning motor braking on and off. I did various things to try to check that. I made sure the connectors were all good. I made sure that my battery lead wasn't possibly coming loose and I was getting some sort of power failure. But you'll be able to see everything in the FPV view as we get there. So you get to see a little bit of additional flight footage. Maybe I do something different that you're wanting to see with it. I really wanted to like this one more than I do. I just didn't enjoy the flight as much, and I think it might have to do with the fact that I've got some jello in there. I think there's some really good components in here, but the fact that, oh, there it is. So you see I go into that roll and I flopped it over. That was just a desync. I didn't see anything on the FPV view of any sort of failsafe or anything of that nature. We do get an opportunity to see that it does turtle mode, and normally I don't turtle mode when I'm outside with the grass and the leaves unless I'm using a machine that's got stronger motors. It's got more overhead for the ESC, but in this particular case, because we do have that 12 amp ESC, it should be fine in the most part, but don't hit the throttle hard. You know, don't go full throttle on your turtle mode. Just give it a little flick. It will ride itself pretty well as long as those props can spin. But that's one of the issues that I had with this, is it was just, you know, every once in a while, when you do a flip or do a roll, it would desync and then you would tumble out of the air, and it kind of ruined the experience for me. I wish I weren't so negative towards this. I wish I had a couple more to try out to see if it, you know, was just something that was isolated to mine and maybe just a manufacturing default. You know, we have, you know, whatever the percentage is of manufacturing failures, and maybe I got one of those failures. In this particular case, I can't say that's the case or not, but I did try to fix it, and that's why it's taken so long to bring to the channel. But at this point, I think I'm kind of done working on it, and there's another one. You know, it flies fine as long as I don't try to do any flips or rolls. You can actually do other moves. And another one right after that. This is crazy, you know. Sometimes you can do a flip or a roll. Sometimes you can't. The motors were nice and cool. I wasn't finding any issues with that. I didn't find that the props were loose or anything of that nature. It just, every once in a while, I just get a desync, and it's kind of random. Sometimes you can, like I said many times here, like, you could do the flip and a roll and it'll be fine. You can do a flip and a roll twice in a row and it'll be fine. Maybe the third time it triggers it. There's just no rhyme or reason for it. So I have to presume it's some sort of manufacturing fault. We're going to do some dives, of course, because we've got to test that out. You know, with these whoops and dives, it's kind of a big sour point for us a little bit when they have the yaw washout. For those that aren't familiar or just getting started in the hobby, I'm getting blown into that tree. Oh, yeah. it's pretty robust. I do have a cracked frame, but you know, other than that, it took it pretty well. But yaw washout, that is something where you're doing a dive and something in the flight controller or possibly in the frame causes the flight controller to freak out a little bit, and then you get a pitch up or a nose up, and then it usually spins one direction or another on the yaw axis. I oftentimes get right, but I have seen here recently that I will get left on some of these sometimes, so that seems to be a variable. And you'll see in some of these that it's not very severe when we get the washout. It's kind of mild, and other times it's more severe. So it's something that, you know, while I worked on the tune, I didn't focus on that because I've already got what appears to be a desync issue, and what role is that playing in having the yaw washout. So you're going to need to do your research and make sure that you're very, very comfortable with what you'll be purchasing if you choose to do so. I've clipped this to show you the most severe of the yaw washouts that I've got. It's in the same flight you've already been watching, but as we go down here, there's a pitch up, and then it kind of almost rolls, but it also spun on the yaw axis as well. So, you know, it is what it is. I just wanted to make sure I'm showing you guys. I'm not going to say these are all that way, but this feels like there's something wrong, and it's not something I think I'm going to be able to fix. So I've got this apart because I wanted to give you an idea about these pieces. I'm hopeful that you can see how thin these boards are if I can get the camera to focus real well. They're very, very thin. I don't think it's coming through. Maybe if you look down between the sockets, see if I can point to it right down in here, you can see how thin the boards are. It's a little hard to tell up here with all these wires. Let me push them down, and maybe I can get an angle on that. It's really hard to see right down in there how thin the flight controller board is. And here are the two pieces where they use some carbon and some screws in order to shore up the frame a little bit. There's one here, and then there's one in front, and then we'd also get a look at the VTX. It does look like a proprietary VTX because of the mounting option that they use, so that's something you need to be aware of. That is power switchable via smart audio. It goes from 25 milliwatts to 100 milliwatts. You're probably also wondering why I'm using Spectrum, and that's because this lead came on the board already connected, and because I have my X-Lite has an iRange module in it where I can bind up to Spectrum, I just decided to dig out one of my Spectrum receivers, bind it up, and use it that way, which it works fine for me, whether you're Spectrum or FlySky or FrSky or whatever. You know, that's what I went with just because it was easy. I didn't have to disconnect anything off the board. Hopefully you can tell here on the board the flight controller is a little bit of that H shape, if I could say that correctly. And these things kind of mount down through there. And the breakage that I mentioned in the quick roll, where'd that go? Oh, here it is. It's on the rear. So you got to see several of my crashes, but this is the only breakage that I have suffered from, and it did fly fine even with that breakage. You probably recognize this frame design from the Blade. I think it was the FPV Pro, their brushless edition of their frame. And then you see the Cadex mount here. You know, it feels solid in here. You know, I can move it a little bit, but you know, I'm not certain there's anything we can do. Is it flexing in here like this and causing the jello in some way? You know, mounting it to the canopy is going to shore things up because you have mount points, two in the front, two in the back, and the frame is somewhat stiff, but it's also a little bit pliable and flexible. So I'm not certain. Maybe you could just, you know, put some foam tape under here to shore up the position of the camera. Maybe that will take care of it. Also note we have a second hole back here. I believe that is because they have an HD version that is available. I'm not certain how that flies, and I'm not going to make the investment to investigate that. Oh, also I noticed I don't know why they'd make a custom canopy and then not make the USB port accessible, so I cut a little notch out of the USB port in order to be able to access that through the canopy without having to take the canopy on and off. I didn't mention in the quick roll, but we do have an XT30 down here, and we do have a battery tray. We also have the option to use this little piece, which you take this off and you mount this on, and then you can use a battery strap. You see you have some slots through there. So you have all sorts of battery options. When I started to sit down to do this review, I had a whole bunch of batteries out because one of the questions I get a lot is about what batteries fit. It doesn't really matter in this case because if you have a battery you want to use on it, you can just put this on and it doesn't require any special tools other than a Phillips screwdriver, and then you just put the strap through it and you can run it that way. And that's really all that comes with the kit. You don't get any instructions or anything of that nature, but I think you should be able to find quite a bit of documentation online wherever you purchase this. I'll put a link down below. I got this one from Heli Nation. You can probably just Google it and find a bunch of other places with this. I haven't seen it in a lot of places though, so you may have to do some digging, and I'll do some digging as well as where it's available, and I'll just link it down below. because everybody seems to like links, so you can just click or tap and move to your own investigation. So I've got the canopy back on, and this kind of shows you the lowest camera angle. Now remember, our screw, you maybe can see it, is that dark spot right there. So that gives you an idea where the center point on the camera is, and then our camera angle. You can push this down, but then it starts to go below the canopy and cut off your view. Maybe you can fly that way. I'm just trying to alert you. Then it stops it here on the bottom part of the frame. You can't go any further. I suppose you could clip that to get it to rotate down further if you wanted to, and then cut this. That could compromise the frame a little bit. I don't think it would be terrible, but it's just not something I would recommend doing. You definitely don't want to buy something and then have to start hack it up to make it work for you. So it's something you need to be aware of. Of course, we do have a fairly large range of camera tilt. You could go all the way up there. You're probably going to see a little bit of the canopy. You could do some Matty stunt stuff. I don't know how capable it is of that, but the camera would sure swing that way. Also, the motors, if you're looking to use these motors on a different sort of build because you like them, they do not have screw holes in the top, so you have to pressure fit all your props. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in that section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.